Today on The Real Story, Republican and former candidate for governor Bob Stefanowski one-on-one. Is he going to run for governor again? We're now 1 year out from the next gubernatorial election. Mr. Stefanowski joins us this morning to give us an update on what he's thinking and what he thinks of the state of our state. Plus, one state representative wants Connecticut's screen and stay quarantine policy in schools amended. State Representative Greg Howard, who is glad the state put it in place, explains what he thinks is missing. Plus, we are seeing COVID numbers tick up across the country and here in Connecticut. We'll also be joined by State Senator Saud Anwar, who's also a doctor. It's all today on The Real Story. Good morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Jen Bernstein. We are now less than a year away from picking Connecticut's next governor. Governor Ned Lamont just recently announced that he is running again, so that firms up the Democratic ticket. But the big question remains on the Republican side. Who will run? Two names that have come up frequently are former candidate for governor Bob Stefanowski and former House Minority Leader Themis Klarides. And just because of the timeline, we're likely going to find out who's throwing their hat in soon. This morning, though, we are joined once again by Mr. Bob Stefanowski. Welcome back on The Real Story. It's been a while.
Thanks, Jen. It's great to be back on. It has been a while. Thanks for having me.
Hope you're doing well. All right, so that's the big question, right? Are you going to run?
I suspected you would ask me that, Jen. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time since 2018 traveling across the state. We were involved in the COVID efforts. We handed out 1.5 million surgical masks when Governor Lamont was unable to get them to the citizens of the state of Connecticut. We were heavily involved in the November elections. We're pretty pleased as Republicans with how that came out. And we're thinking about it hard, Jen. I think if Governor Lamont had done half of what he said he was going to do as governor, we wouldn't have to think about it. But people aren't happy out there, Jen. They want to be able to go to bed at night and not be worried about gunshots outside their house or their car being stolen from their driveway. They want to be able to go to the store and afford to buy groceries and have them be there. They want to have a say in their kids' education and be involved in that. And the governor hasn't provided that in Connecticut. People are ready for a change, and I think you saw that a couple weeks ago on Tuesday in the state elections.
You've certainly been active since the previous election. I mean, you've been out there, you've been talking to people across the state, as you've seen. I mean, we have seen you do that. So when do you think you're going to decide? What's holding you back from announcing now? Is it logistics or still really deciding?
I think it'll be soon, Jen. I mean, we were laser focused on the municipals, and we think as a state we did terrific there. The Republicans made a lot of gains in a lot of areas. We've regrouped since then. Announcing for governor, it's a big commitment. It's a commitment that your family needs to make. And more importantly, it's a commitment to the state of Connecticut. So if and when we do it, we're going to do it right. We're going to come out prepared. It was interesting to me that Governor Lamont suddenly announced on a Monday that he thought he was running and he wasn't quite sure. And then on a Tuesday, he announced that he was sure. And when you make a commitment like this, you've got to be sure, you've got to be committed. And the second after you make that announcement, you got to be 1,000% out there trying to get this state back in order, and that's what we're going to do if and when we're ready. Jen.
Yes, he did. He had announced that he had filed paperwork, but said he wasn't sure yet. And then the next day did say, nope, definitively he loves his job and he wants to continue to keep it. All right, so let's talk about the Republican Party for a second. What direction do you think it needs to go? We saw the municipal elections. GOP did have gains, not only here in Connecticut, but some interesting ones across the nation. So what kind of environment do you think we're in right now? What does that signal to you?
Well, you look at Connecticut and then you look across the country where Virginia, you had a Republican governor candidate win. New Jersey was extraordinarily close, which I think has scared our governor a little bit. And if you think of it like a company, Jen, the Democrats are selling a defective product right now. The Republicans have the product. We just need to communicate it better. We are for public safety and keeping people safe. We are for allowing parents to have a say in their kids' education. We are for school choice. We're for lower taxes. We're for less government regulation. And that's what people want. They're tired of government interfering into every nook and cranny of their lives. And that's why I think you saw the reaction that you did in November. I think it woke a lot of Democrats up. But when you've got a president with a 33% approval rating who did a horrible job in Afghanistan, has totally messed up the economy, and you see that filtering down to the state of Connecticut, people are starting to look sideways. I haven't heard a lot of people that are real supportive of what the governor has done with the economy, with public safety, or with education. And that matters to people, Jen.
You know, President Trump, former President Trump, is someone that is still there. He's still in that environment, and he's still someone you're going to have to contend with and talk about if you do decide to run. He's still present in the National Republican Party in the conversation. So, you know, that was an issue during your run. How are you going to combat that? How do you view that at this point? Because we all know that a Connecticut Republican, not everyone, is a little bit different. Not a little bit, it is different from what the national party, some of the direction the national party has gone. And again, that's a blanket statement. Obviously, there are different people in the party. But, you know, what do you think about that?
Listen, Jen, I timed it. It took you three minutes and 22 seconds to get to that.
Of course. It's a fair question.
Trump is not in office. Joe Biden is in office. Why aren't we talking about the policies that Ned Lamont's buddy Joe Biden has implemented?
We are talking about it. You brought up Joe Biden even quicker than I brought up President Trump.
That have absolutely decimated this economy. If and when President Trump comes back, we'll talk about it. He's a former president. I don't know what he's doing. I don't track it. But
you know he has his hand on the party still.
I don't know whether he does or not, Jen. I'm focused on Connecticut. And I will tell you that the Connecticut Party, when we win back cities like Brookfield and we're winning Danbury and we're taking municipal places all over the state, and Aaron Stewart wins by a big number in New Britain,
she did.
That's what I'm worried about. And I like what I'm seeing. And I just hope it continues into 2022 because we've got the message. We've got the momentum. The Democrats are on their heels right now. And if their rally cry for 2022 is what happened with Donald Trump, they're in a lot of trouble.
Let's talk about some of those Republican strongholds. We know, obviously, that you can win those, right? And it's the cities in the last election. And Tom Foley, you know, former candidate for governor, had this issue too. In the cities, how do you win those? I know that you've been present in New Haven. I know you have gone to the cities, but how do Republicans go to a Bridgeport, a New Haven, and a Hartford and win votes in the next election? What's your thoughts?
We've been doing it, Jen, and we didn't do it for that reasons. I mean, you know my wife, Amy, she doesn't have a political bone in her body, but when you hand out 1.5 million masks with the Jewish Center of Greater New Haven as your sponsor, and you win an award from the NAACP in Waterbury for the efforts that you did with their youth group, and you're on the streets of Bridgeport handing out 30 turkeys the day before, we're doing it for the right reasons because we want to help, but it also makes you very well connected with the community. I've probably been to Bridgeport 25 times since 2018, working with the Boys Club, meeting with local politicians and local youth organizers, and we've gotten to know the issues. And what you hear from the cities, Jen, is they are not against Republicans whatsoever. They love the policies of safer streets and better education. What they will tell you is we just never see Republicans, and we're not going to vote for people that we don't see. And by the way, we don't want you showing up a week before the election because we know why you're here. So Amy and I and the Jewish Federation and the Boys Club in Bridgeport, we've done a tremendous amount in the cities in the last 3 years. And we think it's helped us understand the issues a lot better and make some really strong connections.
Sure. Yeah, your mask efforts were really enormous at the time when you were doing all that, and they were hard to access. Okay, so let's talk about this editorial that you wrote in the Hartford Courant. It was Sunday. Yep. This whole topic has been floating around for a long time right now. We're talking about Governor Lamont and SEMA-4. So that's a specific thing in the editorial, but you're talking about transparency in general. You feel like his administration hasn't been transparent and that Democrats haven't been transparent.
Well, leadership starts at the top, Jen, and you set the example, and people look to that. And when you see what's happening in West Haven, where half of the amount of the COVID funds were gambled away at a casino, allegedly, and there's no disclosure around it, that's obviously a bad thing. But Governor Lamont has set the tone. He awarded a contract. First of all, he mandated that everyone in Connecticut be COVID tested. There's plenty of companies out there that do that. And lo and behold, he picked his wife's company, an area that she has an equity interest in, and he didn't tell anybody about it. Yeah, it was buried in some website on the internet, but the state ethics office had already looked into whether the state of Connecticut could use taxpayer money to make him and his wife more wealthy, and they said, well, we don't really like it, but if you want to do it, you need to disclose it. He never disclosed it. He at the start, he wouldn't even disclose what we were paying Semaphore. When he was caught doing it, he said, well, don't worry, we'll donate all the profits to charity. We've never had an accounting of the profits. We don't know how much they made. We never know whether he gave it to charity. And at a minimum, Jen, in the middle of a pandemic, when you're the CEO of the state of Connecticut, to give a contract to your wife's company with no disclosure, at a minimum, that's horrible judgment. At a maximum, and the tone of my editorial is it's a violation of the state ethics law, and we should look into it.
I mean, look, I think, and in the name of transparency, it is absolutely fair to look at any of these. I will say, so I did a little research because on the Open Government site on the comptroller's office, you can pull up some of these contracts, right? And so I want to make sure that, from what I'm reading, it's the comptroller's office that awarded that contract. The comptroller, that's it's an independent constitutional office. So facts matter, obviously. So,
somebody should ask Kevin Lembo, the comptroller, what he knew about that contract, because Governor Lamont and his chief of staff, Josh Gabel, negotiated the entire contract. Then they shuffled it off to the comptroller's department to sign it, because technically they couldn't sign it. Somebody should ask Kevin Lembo whether he even knew that Semaphore was owned by Governor Lamont's wife's venture capital firm. Somebody should ask Kevin Lembo, how much did he negotiate this contract? Because my perception, and I stress it's just a perception, is that he didn't have a lot to do with that contract other than signing it. And it was mostly window dressing to get it out of the governor's office so he wouldn't be criticized for it. But somebody should ask Kevin Lembo, who has the facts.
Sure. I mean, it's fair to ask. And then I know I found also, or have obtained, the Office of the State Ethics, where Governor Lamont had to list out his wife Annie's business activities in disclosure, right? So I know you're saying they didn't disclose, but you were saying it's on a website. So, I mean, in this opinion, which is from 2019, it is under Mount Sinai Genomics Incorporated, DBA, which does business as Semaphore. So, I mean, he did tell the state, but I'm assuming what you're getting at is that it's just buried on a website. And
think about that question, Jen. I mean, he's using taxpayer money to pay to pay a company he's got an interest in that subsequently filed publicly that he probably made millions of dollars under. Do you really expect that 40-year-old woman in Ansonia who got home at 9 o'clock after working 2 shifts is going to know enough to get up on some website embedded in the state of, in the comptroller's website? That's her responsibility? Absolutely not. It's his responsibility to tell the taxpayers of Connecticut, by the way, X% of the taxes you just paid the state of Connecticut is being funneled to a company that my wife owns. And by the way, I'm going to make money off of it. I mean, it's ludicrous, Jen. The whole concept is ludicrous. I don't know how he's gotten away with it for as long as he had. Well, I know for a fact he's not happy with my editorial, and somebody should start asking him some tough questions.
Just so we know, I did reach out to his office because I knew we were going to have this discussion, and I'm just putting out what they're saying too. They just said that so far he hasn't made money off of it because they still have a position within the company, and they said that, and this was written, that they would donate the profits if they ever put it out there. So
it gets better and better, John. If you've got
I'm putting what I'm hearing out there and what I'm finding on the websites, obviously, but I understand your concerns. And I mean, in the name of transparency, always important to have these conversations. There's no doubt about that. Okay, so tell me, Mr. Stefanowski here, what you would do to increase transparency if you feel like that is important. What would you do in the governor's office to make sure things are disclosed? Obviously, you're a businessman, right? You have business dealings as well.
First of all, he's cut funding to the state contracting agency. The papers have been talking about it for a year. So he's defunded the primary organization that should be looking into these things.
No. What would you do? What would you do to increase?
I would fund that agency back up to capacity, and I would probably add heads to it. I would begin a forensic audit of every dollar of that supposedly COVID relief money, the billions of dollars we got. I would audit, a forensic audit, as to where that was spent. Because if you got a situation in West Haven like we've seen that was absolutely egregious, and that's a city that's already under the supervision of the Municipal Accountability Review Board, and it wasn't picked up. I can guarantee you, Jen, that there are other instances of fraud with respect to that money. We should do a forensic audit of every dollar that was spent, because that's our money too. That's our federal taxpayer money, and we should get rid of the people that did wrong things with it. And I haven't seen the governor do anything about this with respect to any other agency, whether it's the Port Authority, where there's been abuses for years, or whether it's this COVID money that's been raining from the sky, that's been spent totally irresponsibly. It's up to this governor to account for it. He hasn't done it. And if I were governor, I would do it day one, Jen.
Bob Stefanowski, always good to have you on this program. A very spirited conversation. Please don't be a stranger. Come back on and let's bat some things around again, because always good to hear what you have to say.
Good to talk to you,
And let us know
Jen.
when you're going to announce. And if you want to announce on The Real Story, you are welcome to, okay?
You'll be the first to know, Jen. Thank you.
On the record. Thank you. All right, coming up, Connecticut is seeing an uptick in COVID cases. We're going to take a look at where we stand with State Senator and Dr. Saud Anwar. Plus, State Representative Greg Howard will join us. He wants Connecticut's screen and stay policy tweaked. He's citing parents who are frustrated at continued school quarantines. We're going to talk with both of them ahead.